I have a dirty mouth. I'm sure I have to temper it.
Yeah, it's okay.
F words, things like that.
Don't worry about it because
You're going to edit out?
No.
It's going to be like,
It's the way it's supposed to be.
Okay.
I think it's going live on Insta, right away.
Well, usually there's a live Instagram feed on that stand right
Oh,
there.
it's
but
YouTube,
She's
okay.
not here. She leaves at 5. So.
Should I do YouTube?
Yeah, send it to YouTube. Why not? That sound booth you can live stream.
That's nice.
I built it. I had no idea how to use it, and then he comes along and says, "I know how to use it."
Well,
That's awesome.
You rolling?
Rolling.
All right. Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in the studio today in beautiful Southern California, about to have a conversation with Robert Hack and Anders Karimbian O'Connor about Bulgarian wines. But introductions in just a second. Wine Talks, of course, available on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you hang out for your podcasting. And use Wine Talks as a promo code to get the first shipment at half off on any of the clubs that we have online, including the Napa Series, Sweet Series, Rosé. Yet to have a Bulgarian series of wine, but maybe we'll do that soon. Hey, look for the Barrett sisters online for us. We had a great conversation with the granddaughters of the great Jim Barrett, owner of Chateau Montelena, and also the offspring of Heidi and Bo Barrett, the current proprietors of Chateau Montelena. Great conversation, but not why we're here today. We're here to have a conversation. And I wanted to do this, and thank you for coming late, by the way. Welcome to the show, Robert, and welcome to the show, Anders.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Glad you're here, and I wanted to do it for 3 reasons. One, the show must go on, so we just, if it's 7 o'clock, we're going to do 7 o'clock. I want to talk about Bulgarian wines because there's a lot of stories to tell, and I want to tell the story. That's why we're here. So tell me a little bit about Robert Hack. It's sort of like an Armenian name, but shortened, about the short career to get to the wine business, because you weren't always in the wine business. You were at Merrill Lynch. Were you an investment banker? What were you doing there? And then
Yeah, well, I was in finance for almost 17 years, yeah.
you were in France?
No, finance.
Finance.
I was in World Bank, then Merrill Lynch, then Legg Mason, then ended my career at Merrill Lynch. But I always wanted to do something with agriculture. And right after the Soviet collapsed, I started working for the American embassy in Armenia, newly independent Armenia, because obviously, as you know, it was Soviet Union. Then my boss moved to Bulgaria and invited me to go over there. Of course, I said yes because we were in war. It was a blockade. There was nothing going on, no electricity, no water, no nothing. So I jumped at the opportunity, moved my family to Bulgaria as well. And I stayed there for almost 4 years, working for the U.S. Embassy in Sofia. And I kind of fell in love with the country. I mean, obviously at the time it was just like, another run-of-the-mill post-Soviet republic struggling with a million things.
Yeah.
Gangs, mafia, they were involved in a war in Yugoslavia. All the opium and water and guns, traffic was going through Bulgaria.
Just the regular stuff, huh?
Fun time.
But that was like 80...
That was 91.
Oh, 91, yeah, okay.
So 91, 92, I mean, obviously, but through all that, you could see people are nice. It's a beautiful small country with everything you need, seaside, mountains, rock climbing, kayaking, skiing, great food, and apparently great wine, which was for me a discovery. But I didn't pay attention at the time. But when I was done with my finance career, I was like, okay, I want to do something with agriculture, and Bulgaria is 60% agricultural land. I mean, they were bread basket and wine basket for the Warsaw Pact countries during the Soviet era. So I was like, okay, well, so I went back there to kind of investigate what I'm going to be doing, and everybody was like, you got to do wine. We're losing markets. Russia was buying over 40 million liters. That was dead because they got into EU and then joined NATO. So obviously Russians consider them traitors, of course, and that market was lost. Then they slowly sanctions, etc. So they're like, you got to do something because obviously it's a huge capacity. And we tried in the United States, but it wasn't successful.
No.
I said, well, And then I checked in US how much Bulgarian wine was being sold, and there were like a couple of thousand bottles. I was like, wow, this is going to be a challenge. But I said, hey, it's okay, let's put it this way. It wasn't easy, but it was easier in my mind to build Bulgarian wine on a clean slate, because nobody knows. 9 out of 10 Americans have no idea where it's located on a map.
Right.
And 10 out of 10 have no clue they make wine. That was easier for me than to sell, let's say, another French Rhone bottle. Like, how many can you sell and how many importers can you have? So
That's a good point. I mean, this is a tough racket all the way around, regardless.
I mean, believe me, I think my mother tried to do an intervention. She was like, you're going through a tough time, divorced. I understand the psychologically damaging situation right now, but this is crazy.
I want to stop for a second. Introduce Anush, because I want her to tell us what she's doing with the brand, because the brand is Rough Day.
Yep.
And is Bulgariana here also, or no?
Well, you're gonna taste it. It's in our bag. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna taste that in a minute.
It's in the car. So
Anush, you are you're Armenian. You were born in Armenia,
yes.
and you're all over Armenian TV, and you're doing a big show on Sunday, the Gini Fest, which is the wine and the term for wine in Armenian. And where did this love come from?
Love of wine.
Yes.
So my undergrad is in winemaking.
Your undergraduate in Armenia is in winemaking?
Yes, I went to agricultural school and I got an undergraduate degree in winemaking.
Well, no wonder my brother-in-law wants to tap you for yeast
absolutely.
information.
Absolutely. So I went to agricultural school. I was actually going to go to a linguist school to study English.
Yes.
And then, again, because of wonderful times of Soviet Union, I passed my exam and they lowered my grade so that we could bribe them.
No, because I lowered my grades all by myself.
No, they artificially. So then my mom said, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want us to pay for you to go to the language school, or you want to go do something else? And I said, I'm going to go do something completely random, and I'm going to go and, study winemaking.
That's great.
And I did, and I loved it. It was so much fun.
It's got the bug, and you both have it, and it's... we're going to peel back here is the Bulgarian side of this, the Baltic states, because I've been doing this for 35 years, and we were talking about, I saw on a podcast, you were talking about PepsiCo, and I used to do Premiat wine, which was, I think, a PepsiCo trade in Romania at the time. So I want to peel that back. So we're going to kind of cover all this. But since you brought it up, Robert, I'm looking at a map of Bulgarian wine reviews that Wine Folly put out, which is a great source of information for wine. So it looks like to the west is Siberia, and to the southwest is Macedonia, to the south is Greece, to the southeast is Turkey, and due east is the Black Sea.
Right. And then
due north
you mean
is
Serbia?
Serbia.
Serbia, what did I
Southwest.
say?
Northwest. Yeah.
Due north is Romania.
Yeah.
Okay, so all those are Baltic states.
Correct.
So given that this is California, given that you're in the United States, given that we have Napa Valley, given that, the French have been here for hundreds of years, what made you think that bringing Bulgarian wine from the Baltic states is, I've tasted 10 in 30 years, 10. And the latest one I tasted was 2007, so it's not that old. What were you thinking at that point? Yeah, he tilts his head. He says, "I'm not sure."
Was I thinking? No. I mean, it's a great question, Paul. But first of all, I thought it's going to be a challenging enterprise, and I was convinced that the quality. Let's put it this way: style of winemaking for Europe, as you can imagine, and as you know, it's different. So when I was tasting wines in Bulgaria, I was kind of seeing like, okay, if we had the right enologist, they're going to make wine that's going to fit the American palate. Because, high tannic wines, high alcohol, super high acidity, that wasn't going to fly here. And we worked very hard for almost 2-3 years to develop what we wanted. First of all, we didn't want to...
Is that a stupid thing?
And Soviets said, well, you got to buy then Bulgarian wine. They said, okay, let's do a barter. And I still meet Southern and RNDC reps in Maryland. Occasionally, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, the older
remember
dudes."
it.
They're like, "Yeah, I remember like selling 2,000-3,000 cases a month of Bulgarian wine that was flying off the shelf." But then PepsiCo got out of it because they realized wine is not their business. Davis came in and did a project with Bulgarians, telling them, "Look, you have this great opportunity to focus on international varietals because Cabernet and Merlot and Chardonnay do phenomenally well here. Like you need to, like they were already doing it, but they took it to a whole another level." So, and as I was saying, the first guy I met, he was like, "We gotta see the vineyards. We gotta see the vineyards." I'm like, "Vasco, what are we, like, when are we gonna see the winemakers and facilities?" He's like, "Look, I'm gonna tell you a little secret. You can make a super crappy wine from great grapes.
That's right.
But you can never make great wine from super crappy grapes.
That's
So
correct.
pay attention to grapes. I mean, unless you're Gallo and you can just buy juice from New
it's
Zealand.
a whole other story.
Right. But so my confidence in terms of quality was there. I knew we can craft brands, and if we can maintain the quality so people do not get upset by like, "Oh yeah, Eastern Europe, first 2 bottles are great, third one is a crap." So if we can avoid that, then we have a shot. Is there a guarantee? Absolutely not. But I thought, let's paint this white canvas of Bulgaria as a region with its superbly interesting history, going all the way back to Thracian Empire, Homer, Alexander the Great's father, and all that stuff. And arguably one of the first organized geopolitical entities that was selling wine, because they were trading wine with Greece, with Rome, etc., until Greeks conquered them eventually. And by the way, the legend has it that Romans took the vines when they were going back to Rome from Thrace, which is current Bulgaria, back to Gaul, which is current France.
Right.
French hate that story, but nevertheless, the legend exists.
And they don't like the fact that the Italians taught them to cook either. But
Exactly.
That's okay.
So the first mentions of first prominent mention of Bulgarian, well, not Bulgarian, but Thracian wine, which is like, you have to understand, so Thracian Empire covers the bottom part of Bulgaria, current Bulgaria, northern Greece, and northwestern Turkey. So that was Thracian Empire. And they were known for their mercenary work. I mean, they were super warriors, and of course Thracian gold, which was uncovered, and you can still go and see the tombs in Bulgaria. It's kind of pretty cool.
So let me ask you this then. I'm gonna come forward now just to bounce something off Anush, and then I'm gonna go back to those days. So you're on the streets every day, moving, rough day, and some other things coming up. What do you hear from the merchants in Los Angeles when you say, "I have Bulgarian wine"?
It's people are interested. They like. I think LA is a market where people like to experience other wines from other countries. At the same time, the wine is so approachable, and it's if you don't know, in some instances with like the Cabernet and the Chardonnay, you wouldn't even know that it's Bulgarian. So it's kind of, it has the two sides. The wine has two sides to it. But at the same time, with the rosé, which is the indigenous varietal, Gamza, that brings an interest on, oh wow, there's an indigenous varietal. So I think it appeals to everyday wine drinkers, to someone who is looking for something new, and someone who is looking for something that's not super expensive, but it's a good value.
Do you feel like you need to hand sell and educate people on the wines because they're from Bulgaria, and even though they're French varietals, you're still saying, well, it's from Bulgaria?
I think it's an added value. That's how I see it. But even if I don't, people just buy it because they like the label. Label is very catchy. It has a dog on it, and a lot of people who love dogs.
What is with the dog thing?
They just gravitate.
Not this particular case, but there have been a lot of dog labels lately. This reminds me of the Rough Day, which I thought the wines were very good. There was a brand that came out of Moldavia about 20 years ago. It was called Hickory Ridge. And I thought, well, it's an interesting name because they're trying to be but they're trying to be American. But that's like the South, which really isn't known for wine. And then they said, product of Moldavia, and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm buying this. But and the wine, Moldavian wines are pretty good. But was it not like this in the Soviet era of the winemaking world, that the Armenians were to make brandy, the Georgians were to make wine, maybe the Bulgarians and the Hungarians were making wines, but it was pretty controlled as to who did what. Is that accurate?
That's pretty accurate. I mean, across all industries. I mean, like, for example, Armenia was focused on chemical engineering. We had like 3 chemical engineering school for a tiny republic. We had molybden. It was all like, and then Kazakhstan was focusing on something else, etc. But and the same was true for food, but they were a little bit more thought out because obviously Bulgaria was an agricultural land. So I remember you would, for New Year's in Moscow. I mean, I grew up in Moscow and in Armenia, kind of both. If you would find Bulgarian green peas, canned, that was like a big deal.
Wow. Like this is, you're living high on the hog with that.
Oh yeah, because it's for the Russian salad, for salad Olivier. You had to make it, and like it was like everything was deficit, but
Wow.
But so those, and Bulgaria was focusing on wine because I mean Bulgaria was making wine for 4,000 to 6,000 years already, and it wasn't like they were just newcomers. That's why a lot of people, when they ask me, "Oh, when they started making wine," I'm like, "Right, about 4,000 years ago, like give or take." But I mean, no. I mean, I understand the ignorance, and it's normal because nobody knows anything that is. There's a joke, like probably slightly inappropriate, but it's an Armenian joke when a guy goes to a maternity ward to greet his wife, and she's upstairs with a baby, and he says like, "So, what is it? Is it a son?" And she goes, "No. What is it then?" It's like, like if it's
nothing else.
Yeah, if it's not a boy, then there's nothing else,
right.
and
That's
if it's not a French or Italian, then there's not
That's
a
not as
wine.
off color as I was hoping it would be.
Exactly. Well,
So, but you're right though, because you think about the Burgundians, the Bordelais, 1,200 years, 9th century, something like this. We're talking about 4,000 years before that. And so this is the part that is interesting to me and a little confusing. I had Nicole Rollet in here, who's a very famous and very bright wine woman from the Côte Châteauneuf-du-Pape area, Ventoux area. Brilliant woman. She started a foundation called the Areni Global Foundation.
Wow.
And its job is to preserve the culture of wine, not just, it's not Armenian wine, but she named it the Areni. Of course, she says like an Odar, so she says it wrong, but she said they named it Areni Global because of they found that 6,000-year-old winery, blah, 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 which I thought was really fascinating. Because I'm reading this, wait a minute, how does she know what this is, right? So here's the question. You go to Croatia and you get to the menu, and unless it's Grgic, which is the only Croatian thing everybody knows, you don't recognize any of the indigenous grapes.
Right.
You don't, and even Cabernet is a hybrid in itself, right? So what happened to the indigenous grapes of Bulgaria, and are we bringing those? Are we going to work with them, or the Vitis vinifera French varietals are doing so well? We're going to experiment with those.
It's truly a great question, Paul. And we struggled in the beginning because the idea was, I love the saying, nudist Buddhist.
Yeah.
And it's a concept that is like, I forgot which philosopher coined it. It's like, when your uncle comes to a, Thanksgiving party and says, I'm a nudist, everybody kind of like frowns and freaks out, but everybody kind of settles into the idea. And vice versa. It comes and says, I'm a Buddhist. They're like, okay, that's kind of weird.
Family gatherings.
Yeah. But if you come and say, I'm a Buddhist and a nudist, that's probably nobody's going to accept that.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So we figured we're bringing a new region. Nobody knows literally anything about it. All they know is like someone from that country tried to assassinate Pope.
Yeah.
Not a good association. And they have no idea about it. Are we going to go completely native on them and bring some varietal they can't even pronounce? Like what I didn't want to happen, what happened to Greek wines, again, I find Greek wines super appealing, but unless you can pronounce Assyrtiko, it's tough.
Yeah.
And a language psychology that the behavioral psychology of something that you can't pronounce, it becomes innately foreign and uncomfortable to try. I mean, that was also in the back of my mind. And I said, listen, they have fantastic international varietals. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Let's introduce the public to something that they know. Okay, Bulgaria isn't familiar, but Cab is. And they're going to taste something that tastes like California. So, and then once we establish that baseline, then we can start bringing beautiful native varietals. And there are a lot of beautiful native varietals. Like one is Gamza, of which Anush mentioned. Rosé is just fantastic. Gamza, for you to imagine, picture it, is like between Gamay and Pinot Noir. So it's the same sort of and it's an important enough grape that Austrian Museum of Enology and Vine keeps a clone or two different clones, just in case phylloxera or something else wipes it out, so they can recreate because they think it's that important. It's a beautiful grape. We have actually great plans about it. It has a tremendous potential, but we're slowly introducing. And we also have a red Gamza, not rosé version, which is in a Bulgariana lineup. Mm-hmm. But that was with Total Wine, and now we're trying to take it out of Total Wine, make it more of a national brand. So we're working on it. There's also Rubin, which was created by the Enology School of Bulgaria. It's a crisscross between Nebbiolo and Syrah. They created it in the 60s. Beautiful grape.
Wow.
Beautiful grape. But it's so difficult. It's like, think of a Zinfandel, unevenly ripening clusters, where if you're not careful, you can either make it taste green, or you make it super ripe and then you have 17% ABV and then you just screwed up everything. So it's
a hybrid, like finicky grape now.
Very finicky. But if you can, if the problem is you can't make a good Rubin under $30 SRP, and I can't sell yet a Bulgarian wine of $30, but we'll get there.
But I think, and I'm not going to mention any names on this podcast because being Armenian and tied to the wine industry in general, but I did taste an Armenian wine last week that I thought was finally representative of the world-class quality that Arani could produce. And I say it with tongue-in-cheek because I think one of the things the Armenians missed in the beginning was being so tied to the indigenous grapes, and only a couple of them actually went after the French varietals that caught us to try. And Michel Roland, he was mentioned in a couple of articles about you, who was consulting with Winemaking place.
Yeah.
Tells her it's going to be 100 years before you figure out what you can do here, which is probably accurate. You have 4,000 years already under your belt, so it's okay. But do you agree with that, Anush, that maybe in the beginning of the wine industry for Armenians that we were so tied to Arani that we were trying to break into a marketplace, which, you go 5 hours north and you're going to be in Cabernet heaven, and you're going to try and compete on the shelves at Ralph's and Vaughn's with Arani when you've got 200 Cabernets?
I have a different approach. I think that it's good that they are concentrating on Arani because we don't have the capacity to produce as much as Bulgaria. So we cannot compete with a Cabernet made in Armenia at the price point that Bulgaria can do. So Armenia has to differentiate itself with an indigenous varietal so it can fit into a certain niche and have a certain price. The prices are a little bit exaggerated right now, so I think there's a work for that, but I think concentrating for Armenia on the native is good. And then also, of course, if there's a possibility to bring in the European varietals and mix them to make it even more exciting, I'm for that.
I think it's important.
That's a good point.
I think it's important. And the reason I brought up this wine I had the other day, because it spoke of where it was from. And actually Juliana de Guia from Winemaking said it best, and I quote her all the time, and that is, what other product in the world can you plop on a desk 2,000 miles away and say, this is who we are and when we were? Let's say it's 2015. But that's the beauty of wine. Yeah. And so this Armenian wine that I tasted on Tuesday, that sent me there. They don't always do that. And that's why I'm asking about the indigenous grapes of Bulgaria. I want to be sent there. I want to feel that.
I know.
Because they're real, right? They're real.
I agree with you. And true connoisseurs such as yourself often ask me, and I can feel the disappointment when we come in with Pinots and Cabs.
Well, I'm not
I completely get that, and believe me, I want like Mavrud is another native varietal that is extremely interesting, has a tremendous capacity to be aged, but it's also very difficult. And but what I mean, I can't say out loud yet, but we are going to hopefully, fingers crossed, have a joint project with a big California name who also has an Armenian project. And we are going to be working with probably a native varietal and international varietal blend, which will be a great way to introduce a very high-end, strictly micro-vinification boutique wine from Bulgaria, which, by the way, if you taste some of the stuff that we are working on, you're going to flip. I mean, the quality is amazing. I'm not talking about the large industrial kind of size, which sort of Rough Day is, because, I mean, just to give you an idea, we sold 40,000 cases of Rough Day
pretty good
last year. Yes, but that's like, we can't sell, $25, $30 wines of that quality, but I want people to get to know the region through those quality products. And also, in those quality products, even if it's Pinot Noir from Danube region, for example, close to the Romanian border, you're going to feel the terroir. These are not going to be sort of, fruity, soft Pinot Noirs that you can enjoy for $12, $14, $16. Right. And it's going to be superb quality because, I mean, honestly, if you can find anything that can compete with Rough Day Pinot Noir at $14, $15, I'll buy you that bottle. But when you go higher, then terroir and microclimates come into play because we can focus more. We can the guiding process from grape to wine is going to be more different, more refined, more personalized. If we're talking about the specific terroir and specific grape. But actually, I want to add to Anush's point and about our there are a couple. Well, we can call them international varietals. I've tasted Rokatsteli in Armenia. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely stunning. Like stunning. I'm indifferent to Rokatsteli. I've tasted in Georgia and I've tasted in other places. In Moldova, does a lot of Rokatsteli. Armenian Rokatsteli is out of this world. And Syrah, by the way, Karas is Syrah Juliana. For full disclosure, we used to be their distributor on the East Coast for Karas as a distributor. So I visited the winery several times. She's amazing, and their whole crew is absolutely amazing. But I tasted their Syrah, that single varietal that Michel Roland prepared. I fell off the chair. I mean, that was like, that was their first reserve. No, absolutely. It was stunning. Syrah is boring to me if you are taking like, GSM or Rhone area, like, I don't get excited from French Syrah, but Armenian Syrah is like a whole another.
Well, that explains it though. But what you're explaining is the terroir, the fact that you take the same grape and you move it to Obsidian or wherever, and all of a sudden
look at Malbec. I mean, French couldn't do anything with Malbec, and Argentinians said, "Can we try it?" Yeah, by all means. Alicante Boucher, same thing. Portuguese took it, and now it's like the national grape of Portugal. Yeah. And French couldn't, do anything to save their lives. So sometimes certain terroirs, and maybe that rockiness and that the volcanic soil of Armenia, especially where Karas, I mean, it's a crazy project what they uncovered to create the vines.
Well, your budget's, pretty much whatever you want.
Don't say that because they get really annoyed.
She's been on the show twice already, actually. So, and I appreciate the compliment you said I'm a connoisseur. I've tasted a lot of wine in my career, probably 100,000. But the podcast is really to explain these stories and tell the stories. Because when you go to the market in Los Angeles, any supermarket probably in the country, though I will say, my other son-in-law, the one's working today with us, walks into one of these organic biodynamic wine shops in a little town in Brooklyn or someplace up, some little town in New York, and I don't recognize any labels, none of them. I mean, seriously, there's maybe 200 SKUs, I don't recognize 2. And he's pulling stuff off the shelf. So the variety of wine available to all of us is incredible. But if you're in Los Angeles and you go to Ralph's, you go to Vons, you're going to see the same stuff. It's like the mop section of the market. Everybody's got the same mops and the same dustpans. We got Josh. We have Stella. We have
Dow.
Apathic
Apathic.
bread.
Oh, thank you.
And so here's the marketing dilemma. And I'm going to ask Anders this question. Today, RNDC delivered a case of samples of 19 criminals, which is, you know what that is. It's
Right.
just sugared up, acidified, you know what they've done to this stuff.
Over extracted.
And she's in a desperate situation to move a lot of it really fast. And so here I am, I beat the stuff up. I beat up, Snoop Dogg's Cali Red. I mean, come on, seriously? You want me to buy this stuff? But they're offering it at prices so low. The margins are so big. And I'm not doing it just so my listeners understand. I'm not going to buy it, but you're up against that marketing headwind to get shelf presence in America, let alone California. Do you see that? Do you feel that?
I'm sure, but at the moment, the rough day is not in the big market, in the big supermarket. So it's more like on premise in restaurants where it's hand sold, and then in some small stores. So I think maybe you were saying that rough day is coming to Whole Foods.
The rosé was
The
picked
rosé.
up by Whole Foods, yeah.
So then it would be easier, but yeah, I don't see how anyone can compete with that.
No, it's
Yeah.
the consumerism is what bothers me. So yes, I appreciate terroir. I
And
appreciate
then there's
this
name
grapes.
behind it with Snoop Dogg, and people just
Oh, that's-
want
Yeah.
I mean, the commercial side of it is the most exciting to me, if I'm completely honest.
Please.
I like the challenge of when everybody says, how are you going to, like, you go to any grocery store, as you just said, and there's like top 15 Nielsen rated wines. And if you're not in the top 15 Nielsen rated, you're not in a grocery store. If you're not in the grocery stores, you don't have any volume. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. How do you break that cycle? Well, gotta have a persistence. There's
You're right.
no substitute. It's not like hey, I cracked the code and this is what you
There's
say
no code.
to the buyers. No, buyers are the same thing. Everybody goes for the safe bet. Nobody wants to, there are very few visionaries. And let's be honest. I mean, buyers, sometimes I joke, and this is, between when I get frustrated after getting 17 no's in a day, I'll be like,
Welcome to the wine business.
current buyer's job at a major chain could be done by algorithm. You don't,
for sure.
If you're going to be picking top 25, you don't need someone to make a decision. To make a decision, you need to then involve the elements. You need to bring in the variables of vision, what's the word? Creativity.
Yeah.
Something that you're going to be like, hey, maybe this dog thing, like I walked in, I'll give you an example. Chicago is one of our best markets. I mean, we do close to 10,000 cases
Wow.
in
That's great.
Illinois. I mean, and to answer the other question you had, younger generation, millennials, upper edge millennials, young professionals, they have no problem. They're actually, I think, the first generation that is region agnostic. They don't care if it's California, Burgundy. They can't even spell Burgundy. So in Chicago, we walk in to this. I'll give you two stores. One is Indian family-run store that has everything from Barefoot to Kendall Jackson, 18 facings. Okay, we're not talking about a huge store. Apothic, of course, and everything else. And, we walk in, I'm telling the rep, I'm like, well, there's nothing to do here. There's no creativity. It's a commodity. It's a commodity store.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be selling commodity, then, and only big brands can compete in this sphere, there's nothing for us to do. We obviously didn't sell anything, so we go to another store that is in a very young, up-and-coming area of Chicago, and a guy looks at the bottle and goes, great label, taste the wine, fantastic juice. They're going to come for the label, they're going to come back for the juice. Give me 5 case mix and match.
Wow, that's interesting.
That's a different approach, and it's the same size store,
Yeah.
but the guy is making volume, and you look at his selection, it's eclectic.
Yeah.
There's natural wine. There's pet nut. I mean, the Indian
different
dude couldn't even
clientele.
spell pet nut. Yeah, but I mean, you also have to educate your consumer.
For sure.
When sometimes
That's what I
buyers
hear.
tell me, well, I can buy like, I need this cheaper. I'm like, first of all, cheaper is gone. The inflation, have you checked? Like
Yeah,
milk
it's-
costs more. Why do you think wine is exempt from the price pressures? But I'm like, you have to, my customer doesn't buy this. Like your customer doesn't know anything yet.
Yeah.
You need to educate the customer. If you tell the customer, hey, listen, this wine comes from a region that is as ancient as Alexander Great's father. They used to make wine 6,000 years ago. Homer mentions their wine because they were so great and so lush. And it is very affordable, and you're gonna feel like it's a California $20 bottle and you're paying $12. Try this. And I'm sure some people may say no, but there will be a percentage of your customers would be like, hey, this is pretty intriguing stuff. They're gonna drink it, they'll be like, wait, $12? This is an awesome cab. I'm gonna come back. But if you're not going to have that conversation, and I mean, now we're going into nuances of the commerce, which from a retailer standpoint, I'm like, dude, you're paying a ton of money for your per square foot. If you want to make margin, you can't make margin on Kendall Jackson and Apothic. They're gonna walk to next door and buy the same thing $2 less.
Yeah.
With my wine, you can put 35 beeps on it
Yeah.
and make money. Customer will still win because they will have something cool and interesting and intriguing, exciting, and good quality. Win-win. But you gotta be part of the formula.
That's a very important story, and because it is in the story, and if you're not selling the story, and this is a great story, I always tell my customers and my own staff, and look, the story isn't I got it for $3 on Groupon. That's not a story. But if somebody buys a bottle of Rough Day and they're having a dinner and their friends come over, they pour it and they go, what is this? And the guy tells a story about Bulgaria and this crazy guy named Hike. And they're going to go, oh, this is really interesting. Maybe I'll go buy it again. But those are two different stories. In fact, you were talking about Barefoot. It was really interesting you brought that up because he's an old friend. He called on me in 1988.
Wow.
And this Lafitte, it was the Lafitte of California. And I thought, what a stupid, I'm not kidding. He left my office and Mike Houlihan, and I said, what the stupidest idea I've ever heard, right? But at that time, he had no idea what he was doing. He just had this, I forgot, 40,000 gallons of juice that he had traded for a bad debt. Didn't know what to do with it. But he went to a large chain, and it was Thrifty Drugs at the time. It's gone now. And they had a wine section. And he went to talk to the guy, and the guy says, look, you get me a label that when I'm walking down the aisle, that I can see from 4 feet away, bring it back. And that's how the Barefoot label started, with that footprint on there, the dots. There's nothing else on there. So you can see it from it. Like guerrilla marketing, I can go see it. And that's what that's what the dog and the Rough Day thing is doing. But he said something else that was really interesting, particularly the clientele. The other day, the millennials are tough. It's a tough racket.
Very tough,
right? How about the Armenian millennials?
Oh,
I mean,
Lord.
my daughters are, but he's married to one. I don't know. Do you have any idea what they're drinking?
I think they are, well, here's the thing. The Armenian millennials are actually interested in Armenian wine. That is
That's a
amazing.
good thing.
So at the Guinea Fest, at the Armenian Wines and Spirit Festival, you see a lot of them come. And they're actually the ones who buy their tickets before everybody else does.
Really?
Yeah, they appreciate it because they want the story, they want to relate to it, but they also want something different. So
Are these diaspora Armenians? Are they born and raised in Armenia?
it's a mix. It's such a big mix. Like when you come to the festival, it's like you see Armenians from every sort of Armenian. Yeah, and they
So has the traction for Armenian wine, is it exponential in its growth right now, or is it just growing at some steady rate? But are we really like making headway?
I think within past 4 years it has
It's changed a lot for
tripled.
you.
Yeah, the orders coming from Armenia have tripled.
You know, in 2006 when we went, which is amazing about the Armenian wine industry, you could not drink it.
Yeah.
And of course, in the Armenian fashion, we're on the bus, we're stopping at the wineries, you have to tell the guy, this is really good, and you really like it, and I
It
can't
was
drink
bad.
it.
It was so bad.
And he's giving you bottles on the way out the door, but it
Yeah.
was very bad. But now that they brought the technology, they brought winemakers, they brought guys like Michel Rolland to consult. And I want to go back to his comment to Juliana. We have 100 years to figure this out. How is it in Bulgaria when you've got this ancient trade, a lot of history behind it, probably a lot of winemaking experience that was dormant for a while?
Yeah.
Are we bleeding off of that experience to bring forth good terroir-driven Bulgarian wines?
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. I mean, ultimately, I think there's the Hungarian experience, which to me is interesting, but they're not super successful on the US market, for example. But Hungary consciously went through sort of a boutiquization of their wine industry. They don't have any mass production, everything is super expensive, well made, etc. But it's challenging. I think Bulgaria has, as Anush said, it has both. It has the capacity and capability of producing uniquely terroir-driven, high-quality wines, and at the same time can produce, barefoot type of volume, millions of bottles, which is kind of my goal. I want to sell, 40 million bottles of Bulgarian wine, but a bit higher quality than, not a bit, a lot higher quality than barefoot. Just to give you an idea, when people say, well, you keep saying this is like a $20 or $22 California wine, how is that possible? How can you make it cheaper? I'm like, well, it's like pure math. If you're, let's say, average land in California, if you combine, Sonoma, Russia, and Napa, let's say $240,000 an acre, okay? Mathematically, you can't make a $12 bottle of wine if you are paying that much. You may as well go do almonds, which has a higher ROI. If we're talking, I know Anush hates these conversations probably, and a lot of people say, oh God, wine, it's passion, love. I'm like, yeah, but you get to nitty gritty of it, it's business, it's math.
You gotta make money, man.
So
it depends.
That's
what you choose.
I'm being facetious. Trust me, it's you are far more intellectual than that.
Well, you're right. It's business, man. When it's all said and done, you got to make money.
Yeah, and an acre of our land costs $5,000. Good quality Cabernet ton in Napa, is, let's say, averages between $4,000 to $8,000 a ton. We pay 600 euros per ton. Similar yield, similar quality. And to give you a dirty secret, when French have terrible year, we all tremble because they get a special permission. They come in and buy wine from Bulgaria and Serbia because it's Cab and Merlot, very similar.
Yeah.
And quality-wise, it fits them. So they get allowance from Agriculture Ministry of France to come in and get outside grapes. So we can make a hand-picked, not mechanized harvesting, hand-sorted, gravitationally fed wine that can cost $14 to $17, whereas California, for a similar quality, that just purely talking about variables that go into winemaking, they can't make that kind of a wine for less than $29.99. They just can't.
No, it's hard.
Unless you're an altruist, by all means,
No, it's very hard. I was talking to Mike Salacci of Opus, the winemaker. He says, in 2018, Cabernet from Napa was $8,000 a ton. That's just $80 for the juice in every bottle, just right there. And how are you supposed to? And that conversation is a different conversation because there's not that many people are going to buy your $150 bottle of Cabernet.
That's true,
right? So that's the balance of the wine business and the effort. The difficult part of it. The margins suck in general, and it's very interesting. I'm long in inventory right now because, long story short, my people bought too much. So I put some of my wine back into the wholesale market, and they're buying it up. I'm still making a decent margin on it, but they're buying it up because it's still cheaper than what they can buy out of the book.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting because the supply chain. What is glass now? It was $6 for a case. Now it's $14 to $16.
Don't talk about bottles.
Yeah, so it's nuts. But I have a funny story. George Bardikian, the famed restaurateur of Omar Khayyam's in San Francisco, and the Ansar guy that brought all the Armenians from Russia in the DP camps to America, brought 250,000 Armenians, or 20,000 Armenians. And he bought 250 acres on the floor of Napa Valley in 1949 or something like that.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. And so he built a pond, and he only planted vegetables. He never planted grapes. And he used them for his restaurant. He was very well known for his Armenian restaurant. He became Eisenhower's Armenian, he was the commissary consultant all over the world. He flew all over the world and changed the menus of all the army bases. A very famous guy. But his son tells me, he's like, yeah, we sold the property.
Do they still have that white barn where they do events there still though?
The Contessa? Now
There's
it's,
like,
now
I
it's
think
Contessa, by the way.
Oh, now it's Contessa.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's what I remember my mom was saying. There's this family, they used to have this.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing story. They have a beautiful vineyard in Sonoma now, but I always thought when he's talked about the quality of land, the price of land, I mean, that's probably, who knows how many millions this stuff is worth.
Easily. If it has Napa
Yeah, it's got now.
in it, yeah.
So
At least $1 million an acre.
Yeah, particularly planted, right?
Yeah.
Is there an indigenous methodology to winemaking? We're almost at an hour already. I can't believe it. Is there an indigenous methodology to winemaking from Bulgaria that is maybe similar to Georgia, the amphora, the buried clay pots? There's something that is inherited that would be really indigenous to Bulgarian winemaking, or is it just sort of part of the Baltic states, the way we used to make wine all this time?
The short answer is no. I mean, there are parts that use amphoras still, but majority of it, like when 19th century, right after they got their independence from Ottoman Empire, and by the way, it's interesting, through Ottoman period, they continued to make wine kind of quietly, and Turks actually allowed that because it was sort of like keeping the periphery happy, mostly for Christian purposes. And I mean, I don't say this in a Balkan dinner, but a lot of Balkan population at the time was identifying themselves as Christians first, and then Bulgarian or Serbian, maybe. Christian was the most important sort of a differentiation. So they made kind of around 19th century, turn of the 19th century, the phylloxera killed a lot of Bulgarian wines. French guy comes in, his name escapes me. I was like thinking, it's just like maybe I'm having early dementia. So he comes in, revitalizes the basically vineyards and wine industry in Bulgaria, creates an enology school, which is like more than 100 and a change years old in Bulgaria. And they introduced French type of cement tanks. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the old Bulgarian wineries, you can still find those cement tanks, which are kind of cool. Some of them are being kind of redone inside, and they put like a stainless steel, but it was done in typical French style because the influence was basically French winemaking. And of course, now I don't know if you know this, but Count von Pierce, the guy who owns a bunch of Bordeaux, he set up a shop there. He has a very beautiful winery called Enira Bessa Valley. He makes.
So the French are coming.
Yeah, French are coming. I mean, obviously Michel Roland was there.
But I mean, investing.
Yeah, and there's the Italian money that is coming.
That tells you a lot.
Yeah, of course, because I mean, what they recognize, which I had to be explained in my early days of getting into wine, grape, the source.
Yes.
The raw material is there.
Right.
And of course, during Soviet times, you gotta hand it to them, because what they did, they industrialized the processes, they cleaned up. And there's another great enologist that I met. I said, listen, if you have to put one word as a key component to making great wine, what is it? He said, sterility. I was like, really? He's like, yep. If your process is sterile,
yeah,
you can't screw up much. He's like, yeah, maybe style may not be this or that, but there will be no defects, no visible defects. And So they did a lot of things on a state-run basis to create a very modern, for 1960s, 17 standards, wine industry, even for Europe. So from that standpoint, they are way ahead of all other Eastern European countries. And Moldova, unfortunately, got devastated during Gorbachev when he came in and tried to implement prohibition to make Russians drink less. And unfortunately, they destroyed acres upon acres of vines in Moldova.
Wow.
And it took them 30 years to get back. I mean, Moldova was a great wine-producing region, but now they're getting back into it. But Bulgaria is like, that's why when I tell people, like, listen, when you're buying Bulgarian wine, it doesn't matter if it's our wine or someone else's wine. Number one, you're buying a quality. You may not like the style, but you can be rest assured that the quality of production and wine growing and vinification process is superb. Number one. Number two, you're buying a history. Tradition that these people have been making wine, seriously for a very long period of time. Number three, it is probably the last remaining up and coming unknown region that can truly claim the title of a wine region. Not Brazil, that Johnny come lately we're making sparkling, nothing, I'm not knocking them down, or Uruguay or whatever else. I mean, these guys were making wine for 6,000 years and they're continuing to make wine. And they have perfected and they've improved. And they're continuously improving because you younger enologists are coming up and doing fantastic stuff. So you are truly buying part of ancient history of wine at the same time with modern tilt, and you're not breaking your buck, and you're enjoying a quality product for a decent amount of money.
It's kind of straddling the definition of New World, Old World, right? Obviously, it's Old World. They're making wines, but they're not hunkered down or shackled by indigenous grapes that you have to grow, like the Bordelais or the Burgundies. They're stuck with that.
Right.
So if you look at the New World of winemaking, South America, United States, you can do whatever you want.
Correct.
You do whatever you want to do. But there's also that part of the definition of new versus old, which is the character.
Right.
The old socks, musty, earthy, dirty character that comes from unrefined winemaking. But wouldn't you want to taste, a Bulgarian wine? I want to taste a Burgundy that came from the monks. I want to taste a Bulgarian wine that came from those days. If you could bring it forward 100, 200, 300 years, because they didn't have the techniques.
Right.
And they had no intervention. There were no pesticides. It was all organic. It was maybe biodynamic. Who knows what the monks were following?
Right,
illusion,
exactly.
Right, but there was no intervention, right? Wasn't that organic? Why is this such a new thing that we have to deal with this? And that it's just the way it always was. But I would love to taste something like that. Pretend I went back and we just uncorked the current vintage.
You will. I mean, we are working on a Mavrut and we're working on aged Gamza, which is going to be phenomenal. And it's going to have that earthy kind of dirty elements, but it's going to be a quality wine. I mean, in other words, process is going to be modern, but you're going to feel that sort of like an ancient vibe. The only caveat there is like, I would like to make some money. It's like you can't make money on dirty and processed.
You got to run business.
Yeah, you got to run the business. But speaking of pesticides, we are very strict. Our growers do not use Roundup, and which is, by the way, Europe is a huge abuser of that. And glyphosate in French there's nothing wrong with that, but we just don't want it. We don't even use copper. By the way, copper is allowed to be used for organic wine growing.
Yeah, it is.
We don't even use copper. And we don't, all our wines are vegan, by the way, not because it just happened to be, we use bentonite instead of egg whites, for example.
Right.
Nothing wrong with egg whites, for God's sakes. No, nobody just send hate mails.
Right.
No, but it's just a choice. We're trying, I'm a health freak. I don't eat processed food. I try to cook my own things, and it's my own thing. So if I'm producing wine, I want to stand behind it. I want to be able to drink myself. So we have a We have a nutritional fact on the back of the label. I think wine should not be exempt from it. Like you have a nutritional label on the water. Why wine shouldn't have?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's passion, love, and dedication. Oh, bull crap. There's like 30, chemical elements that go into it. Can we just disclose it? And can we make sure that people know how much sugar in a pathic? I mean, it's... And also you can scan the QR code and go on our website and learn far more about, each varietal and how it's made than you ever need to know. But I think transparency with a consumer is another part of that story. Like, hey, you know what you're drinking. Here's the traceability. Here's where it's produced. Here's how it's produced. Make your own judgment call.
So the opposite side of that, and I don't take a position. I don't take a political position on that because then I may be out of business. But the opposite side of that comment is I get a lot of organic biodynamic stuff in here. Some of it's pretty good, some of it's not so great. I completely think it's an important thing. I think low intervention is an important thing. I think what's coming from the vineyard should be what you're supposed to be tasting, and that's what I want to taste. If I can afford to buy wines, I can taste that. But when I see labels recently where it has how many carbs, how much sugar, and all these things, and the other day I put it up on Facebook and I went, yeah, low in alcohol. What does that mean? I mean, 11 or 13%, big deal. 2 points isn't going to kill you or make it any other way. And of course there's no carbs because there's no sugar.
Right.
Right? And most wine, really, unless you're buying Apothic Red or Josh or something, doesn't have sugar. Most finely made wines is pretty low in sugar.
Most.
Yeah, most.
Key word.
So that crap, man, you can taste it, right? That case of 19 criminals is all sugar. But going through each one of these things, I think even one said gluten-free. It's like, well, yes. I mean, come on. That's fooling the customer. That's fooling the client.
People have those questions.
I know they do.
So.
And there is actually we gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
But there is a point in where a wine touches wheat. If you buy your Cooper uses wheat paste to seal the lid. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Don't use wheat paste anymore.
The bentonite is important too for allergies. Some people are allergic to fish and eggs, and you use either fish protein or you use the egg whites. So mentioning that bentonite, it's like something that people are not allergic to that it's an advantage.
I've never heard of anybody, like my wife's allergic to shellfish. She never. Usually it's sulfites, not sulfite. Usually it's the histamines in the red ones. That's usually the problem, right? Sulfur's in the thing.
Yeah.
We could do this forever, and I hope we can do it again. It's already been an hour. It's been totally fascinating. I have one question for you before we get off. It's a trivia question. It has to be French wines. So this book was written by a Frenchman. He's a French doctor. Written in the 70s.
Okay.
It's translated to English, and it's basically a whole book of human ailments, flatulence, diarrhea,
Lovely.
menopause, everything. Okay, and then there's a cure and a dosage for that cure.
Okay.
All right, so you guys, I'll try to make it because you give you 2 out of 3. I'm going to give you an ailment, and I'm going to give you 3 French wines that could possibly cure, at least make you feel better.
Okay.
All right. So let's just say you have bronchitis.
Bronchitis. Okay.
Bronchitis
You
is
can
the
either
worst,
have
yeah.
a Grave, Bordeaux. You can have a Burgundy, or you could have a dry Champagne.
Dry champagne.
Yeah, I would go with that too.
And what would be the logic on that? Let's see if
Well, it's respiratory, probably
The red.
less
would be
sugar.
better.
Okay, so here
less inflammation.
it's supposed to be in here.
Unless it's the you said Burgundy.
Yeah, Burgundy.
Unless it's the Burgundy, because Burgundy is the thin-skinned grape, and it's softer and.
All right. Well,
I'm just
there's a
enjoying
second
dry
guess. You're right.
champagne,
It was
no.
Burgundy.
If I have
It's
bronchitis, I
Burgundy?
would like champagne.
It is Burgundy.
It is Burgundy. I always throw champagne in because there's some
I
value to
thought about
champagne
it.
with the minerality
Right.
and the dryness
But
of it.
some people get, like my husband, when he drinks white wine, sometimes he gets like dry in his esophagus. So
Ah.
I said that, and then I was like, no, maybe not.
It's an occupational hazard for you, isn't it?
More champagne for me.
So the
Or more
question.
wine.
So what's the dosage? How much Burgundy should you have if you have bronchitis?
A bottle?
1 ounce a day.
No, it's 4 glasses.
4 glasses.
I
That's
said,
Because
enough.
I told you, like maybe it won't cure you, but you're going to feel a lot
Yeah,
better. when you do it,
definitely.
right? But actually, it says here because both these wines are rich in phosphorus,
Phosphorus.
and the properties of which are listed at the beginning of this work. So he's using the phosphorus as a thing. Anyways, it's funny. I read this to a Burgundian winemaker last week, and he took a copy, a photograph. He wants to get a copy of the book.
That's so funny.
It's on. But Anush and Robert, thank you so much for coming in. I know it's late. We got to taste some wine still, but looking
So
forward to that,
pleasure.
and looking forward to. Are you gonna be at Guinea Fest then? Are you there?
Yes.
Okay,
He
so
is
see you there.
representing Rough Day.
I'm
at
the
festival.
Odar.
Yeah, what are you doing in there, man?
So he qualifies for 2 reasons. Number one, that
Just
he's
like you, I
Armenian. Armenian. So it's everything that Armenian owned or made in Armenia. So that's how you qualify.
Wow,
See,
And
I
then-
squeaked the
that's
back
pretty
door.
amazing. Yeah.
And then in the fall we're going to have the International Guinea Fest,
Oh,
where we're
that's
going
cool.
to have Armenia and all lesser known regions. So he is the preview of the International Guinea Fest.
Oh, so you got a lot of pressure.
Yeah,
Lot
a
of
lot is riding on my shoulders, on my feeble Bulgarian shoulders.
Thank you for
Paul,
coming.
thank you so much. We
Cheers.
appreciate the
Thank you.
chance.
A lot of
Thank
fun.
you.